Good morning, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another edition of Top 10 Songs. Today in the co-captain's chair, I'm thinking he's this way. It's hard to tell in the Zoom some days. I'm thinking it's this way. Martin Popoff is back yet again. Martin, welcome. How are you doing this morning?
Yes, doing fine, Pete. Thanks for having me again. This was definitely a lot of fun putting this one together.
Yeah, so we're talking about Gillan, right? So Ian Gillan's main band outside of Deep Purple, Gillan. We're not doing the Ian Gillan band. We're not doing Ian Gillan solo. We're not doing Deep Purple, any of that stuff. This is just the Gillan band, Gillan. Martin and I, big fans of this band. And I think, I don't know about you, Martin, but I've said it numerous times that Gillan is one of the best late 70s, early 80s heavy rock bands that most people don't even know about. They know who he is, but have never listened to this band. I think here in the U.S., mainly it's because most of these albums were not available here other than imports. But most people don't know this catalog. And so we've already done a Ranking the Album show a couple months ago. Today we're going to dive into the songs. So Martin and I have each put together our 10 favorite tracks, and I have some honorable mentions. I'm sure he does as well. And I think the object here is, if you haven't listened to Gillan, just take any of these songs that Martin and I are going to talk about, go on YouTube here and check them out. I guarantee you'll like them because, I don't know, Martin, arguably much heavier than Deep Purple.
Yeah, I mean, I literally have often said that Gillan is my favorite band of all time. Like when I'm picking like obscure bands, like I often go with ZZ Top or AC/DC or Black Sabbath or Blue Oyster Cult. There's the obvious ones, and I say I'm just going to give you a boring answer, right? But when I don't feel like giving a boring answer, it's Gillan or it's Max Webster, right? Or the Dictators or King's X or Clutch or somebody, right?
Or Budgie.
I'll tell you a funny story. I just recently, actually now a couple months ago now, but I interviewed Ian Pace, Andy, and Gillan for the new Deep Purple album.
Nice.
And I tried to sidle into some Gillan questions with Ian, and I even kind of went above the board and said, I've almost got enough to do a Gillan book. I've done Deep Purple books and Rainbow and White Snake, and it's like, but, I just want to ask you a couple of song questions. And he cut me right off. He said, you know what, Martin, I've had 3 or 4 people talk to me about doing a Gillan book, and I've just said no every time. And I think I'm just going to leave that chapter closed. So he good-naturedly shut me down. He wouldn't answer any more Gillan questions. But over the years, I have talked to, various guys in the band and gotten cool answers from them, including Ian. But no, Ian basically told me, I'm not going to cooperate and do a Gillan book with you.
I wonder why. Is that because the band kind of ended in not a good way, or because he doesn't want to kind of slight the guys in Purple right now? Well, his previous band.
I think it's a little bit because he's done his own, autobiography before. It's kind of a casual one. It's a fun read, but also I think there's still a lot of bad blood there. The way the band ended, the way the finance happened. I don't think it's a particularly happy period in his life, but. I'm sure he's tired of all of us telling him how great a band it was, right? It was a very cool band. So I'm dying to see your list. Absolutely. I'm
dying to see yours. I mean, in reading a lot of your books, I know you've talked a lot about this band throughout a few of them, but the Deep Purple related ones. So, and I know which albums you prefer. I'm really interested to hear your songs as well. Yeah, with that, I'll let you kick it off with number 10.
Okay, so number 10, let me get my copy of the record here. Where is it? There we go. So number 10 is from Double Trouble. And so this is his second to last album. And I picked a Sunbeam off of this album from my number 10. I think it's a really cool, heavy song. It's got a little bit of that, polluted, smoke-choked Sabbath vibe to it. It's got a nice modulation to it. It's just a good, heavy song with a really light title. But yeah, and it's not one of his particularly super slow ones or fast ones or epics. It's one of these in the middle, a little bit out there. So yeah, good heavy song off of Double Trouble with Yannick Gers as guitarist on. He's on that record and on Magic, of course. And he doesn't do a lot of writing. I mean, the writing is basically John McCoy and Colin Towns on most of the music.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
So yeah, good heavy one.
I'm going to stay on that album for I'll Rip Your Spine Out from Double Trouble. You might see a little bit of a kind of familiarity with a lot of the songs in maybe not, at least a handful of them. I love those kind of opening album barn burners that he put on almost every single album. These like kind of raging, almost speed metal, rippers that, I mean, let's be truthful here. A lot of this catalog is pretty damn heavy, and it slots right in there with what was going on in the new wave of British heavy metal. I mean, it's there's not a lot different there. This is a very different band from Deep Purple, other than you had some of those kind of epic kind of proggy moments throughout a lot of his albums, or their albums, I should say. But I'll Rip Your Spine Out was not one of those. This was just a raging metal machine, kicking off a very, very fine album. Of course, you know, live and studio stuff here. And it's funny you bring up Yannick Gers before. I was actually, you know, when I was kind of going and re-listening to some of this stuff, I was checking out some stuff on YouTube, and I watched a couple of videos from this time period. Yannick was doing the exact same moves in Gillan that he does in Iron Maiden now. He has not changed in like 40 years, man. He's still doing the same thing, twirling the guitar around and doing the shuffle back and forth. I'm like, watching. I'm like, man, this is like, it's like they took this video from like 2010 and just dropped it back into 1981. It was crazy. Crazy.
Yeah. Funny. Yeah. All right. So, so number 9, I went with Roller from this album. This is the Mr. Universe album. This is his second album as Gillan. Roller is just one of these really cool heavy ones. It's got this marauding fast riff, and yeah, he does a lot of speedy heavy songs on this. Or I mean, throughout the Gillan catalog. I mean, I always call Gillan the punk Deep Purple, or the heavy metal Doors, because Colin Towns is such a big part of this, the wacky keyboard sounds throughout this band. So they're like a Deep Purple off the rails, right? Or you know, a new wave of British heavy metal Deep Purple, but like a poverty version, right? They would be like a really poor new wave of British heavy metal band doing Deep Purple, or like I say, a punk Deep Purple. And Roller is definitely one of those. That fits in this. So yeah,
they're just below blue collar, right? Yeah, just they absolutely, because the way they dress on stage and all that kind of stuff.
Exactly, yeah. But also all this recording at Kingsway Studios, which was, you know, Gillan had, I can't remember how the timeline works, but he had some ownership in that. So that's why you get a lot of B-sides from this band. But the production is very, very rough and mid-rangey, and you got that big, you know, distorted John McCoy bass sound as well all the time. So yeah, they're definitely a really, really rough and ready, like I say, a new wave of British heavy metal band, not on a budget or a punk band. So anyways, there you go. Number 9, Roller.
Well, that's a great one. I love that song. My number 9 appears on 2 albums. The one I actually prefer is on the Japanese album, the very first Gillan album, but I actually have that in the car, so I'll pull it from this one. We're talking about Secret of the Dance, another raging stomper, right? I love the vocal on that song. I love the guitar playing, regardless of who's doing it on which album. But just another really good up-tempo, furious song. And I'll make no bones about it. Ian Gillan is my favorite singer of all time, and I have always been addicted to screaming Ian Gillan. Just something about it. I guess, you know, at 14 years old, listening to Child in Time, listening to that guy wail, I always gravitate towards any song by him where he's just letting it loose. And that's why I love this catalog so much. I think the songs are great, but he's just being Ian. That's, I think, what sets him apart from all the other vocalists for me, is what you hear on a couple of those Purple albums, all the Gillan catalog, and Born Again by Sabbath. That's the Ian Gillan for me. Oh, and Jesus Christ Superstar as well, because he does it there too.
Cool. All right. Okay, so my number 8, I went with Bluesy Bluesy from this one, Magic. This is one of my framed up things that I put around the office. We got Yannick on there and Ian on that one, and we got a little Ian Gillan band Scarabus down in the corner here, some ticket stubs. So Bluesy Bluesy is another one of these slow heavy ones, a little bit proggy, a little bit different that you don't expect. But just, and again, kind of a soft title to it, a bluesy soft title, right? But yeah, just a big, heavy, it's almost like a very slow Iron Maiden gallop almost on this one. And, you know, it's cool that Yannick is on here. But again, Yannick, you know, it's funny, Pete, you mentioned he does all the same moves, but he sure doesn't sound at all like Iron Maiden on these albums. He really doesn't have that distinctive sound, but, you know, to be a complimentary of them, I love the riffs all over these albums. But again, on these 2 records, I mean, he writes practically nothing. It's John McCoy and Colin Towns doing all the music. So kind of interesting. I wonder if there was a contractual thing. I'm not sure. if he wasn't allowed to be said as a writer, because he's coming from White Spirit, right, which was an MCA band. So who knows? But I love his guitar work all over these albums. But it's not a distinct sound, and it's certainly not the Iron Maiden sound. So yeah, Bluesy Blue Sea, my number 8.
In all honesty, though, has he, even in Iron Maiden, does he have a distinct sound? I don't know. It's more like, I've always thought, perfectly fine player for what he does. I mean, you can't really knock it at all. To me, he always seemed like a guy that was really more interested in the image. And because of that, maybe the individuality of what he brought to the table from a guitar standpoint kind of took a hit a little bit. I don't know, but I never disliked his playing. But I agree with you. It's like he doesn't like, it's not like Bernie Torme. You hear Bernie Torme, you can talk all day about that, his guitar playing. With Yannick, it's like, yeah, it's really good. Great riffs, tasty, quick solos. What more can you say? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. And interesting enough about Bluesy Blue Sea, I was watching a clip yesterday from, I think, the early 90s of Ian Gillan's solo band playing that live, which I thought was totally cool. And I'd never seen that before. Really great song.
Yeah.
All right, my number 8 from Future Shock, Night Ride Out of Phoenix.
Cool.
Heavy metallic song, got like some cool proggy keyboards. It's one of the lengthier ones on this album. I think Future Shock is kind of an underrated album. It's not like in my top favorite or two, but I think it's really, really solid all the way through. And I love Torme's riffing on that song. Again, just another hard driving, heavy rock song. I think it really works on an album that's got a lot of variety on it.
Cool. Okay. My number 7, you've already talked about. I'll Rip Your Spine Out from this album. You know, and I can't add much to what you said. I agree 100%. It is a cool, heavy, rhythmic, atmospheric, heavy song. And it is one of these where we get those choice Ian Gillan screams. But yeah, one of the heavier songs they ever did, not a particularly keyboardy song. And just, although I can picture, Colin's always in there somewhere,
yeah,
right?
He's always there, yep.
Some crazy thing. Like he's kind of like the predecessor to Don Airey, really, that playful style that that he's going to pull out all the tricks and put them somewhere on these records. So yeah, I can even picture him on that song as well. But no, it's just a no nonsense, super heavy one. Like you say, one of these cool openers.
Yep. Speaking of openers, how about What's the Matter from Magic?
Okay.
Another kick-ass opener, right?
Yeah.
With
absolutely.
a very insistent vocal from Ian. Lots of great riffs from Yannick on this one. I just think, and the rhythms are really, really steadfast on this song. So I think Magic, another one of those underrated albums in the catalog. Most people tend to kind of gravitate towards the first couple, but I think this is a really good album. And I was listening to this again yesterday. I'm like, yeah, what would have happened if these guys would have continued on? You know, no Black Sabbath happens, no Deep Purple reunion. Interesting how this band, to think how they would have navigated through the rest of the 80s. We'll never know, I guess.
Cool. Yeah. Okay, so my number 6, that's what number 6. I had to chuckle when you talked about this song because I picked Secret of the Dance, sorry. But I picked it from the Japanese album because I went and compared the 3 or 4 songs that are on Mr. Universe and the Japanese album. Otherwise,
it's better on that album. I agree with it. It's better. Yeah,
yeah,
it's
and it's the only one. I didn't think I didn't think Dead of Night or Fighting, like some of these other ones, were better. But I actually thought, and I wanted to pick something from every album. I didn't really force it, but it just kind of turned out that way. And I think Secret of the Dance is a little better from this album. So this is the album where you get Pete Barnacle drumming and you get Steve Bird on guitar. I think Mick Underwood is more my favorite drummer of the band, but I think Pete Barnacle does a pretty good job. I just want to check something here. I think he does a good job, and this has kind of like a really cool, fierce and furious production quality, this record, but it's also a little more bass heavy. So I think Secret of the Dance, which is just a fast ripper, is the one song that I could say, I kind of prefer the version on the Japanese album better. One more thing I want to say about the Japanese album. The cool thing about it, October 1978, that's a really, it's pretty heavy and pretty prescient to be in there, kind of almost like kicking off the new wave of British heavy metal You know, and you're Ian Gillan. You're a guy from the old days. You're from the mid '60s actually, and you're kicking this thing off. And John McCoy is in Saxon. He's also kicking it off. They're one of the early bands in here. So it's pretty cool that Gillan and did I say Saxon? I meant Samson. It's cool that Samson and Gillan are literally, and Motorhead are probably like the three earliest new wave of British heavy metal bands.
Yeah,
It's kind of cool.
And I will say Steve Bird's guitar playing on that album is pretty damn good. And I can see why Bernie Torme was chosen as the kind of successor there, because if you listen to that Japanese album, their styles are kind of similar. He's got that kind of wild style, just like Bernie, and I think it kind of works. And that's why the transition to from the two albums is pretty seamless, in my opinion.
Yeah.
All right, number 6. I don't think not an album that we have tackled yet. I don't believe, but Glory Road, On the Rocks.
Right.
On the Rocks for me is a good, hard driving, pump your fist in the air anthem. Again, great chorus, great vocal. I love everything about it. It's always been one of my favorites. I will point out that my CD reissue here has the bonus disc for Gillan fans only, which has a wild collection of, rarities and fun stuff that was only available to those in the Gillan fan club, which they later released on CD, which is, it's good to have. I guess not one of those things that you listen to on a regular basis from this band, but fun to have. So anyway, off to you for number 5.
Okay, so number 5, I went with the same album, and it's there we go. So it's the last song on side 1 on Glory Road, and it's Sleeping on the Job. This one's a little bit of a soft one. I didn't know where to put it in here, but I have a lot of sort of fond nostalgic memories with this, because I remember getting the Sleeping on the Job single, and it had one really cool B-side. I stuck to, the albums for this list, but they have a lot of good B-sides. But, truthfully, I don't think I would have put a single B-side on my top 10 other than Higher and Higher, which was the flip side to Sleeping on the Job as a single. But no, I just like this. It's a good, soberly recorded, kind of like a Deep Purple shuffle. It's very Deep Purple-ish, this one, very hooky. So yeah, just it's one of these where he sings, where there's that unison between the keyboard riff and the guitar riff. They do that quite a bit in this band.
It's kind of like Lazy a little bit, I think. I've always kind of
good point. Yeah,
matched it up there.
Yeah. So that's one of the more accessible songs, I think, from Glory Road.
Yeah, it's a great song, really great album. I have often juggled between what is my favorite Gillan album. Is it Mr. Universe or Glory Road? They're both so damn good.
Yeah, good point. Yeah.
Speaking of Mr. Universe, I'm going to go back to that album for me, what could be the ultimate Gillan anthem, Vengeance. I couldn't see a top 10 without that song in it. It's just, you hear that song, it's just,
I'm going to disagree with you big on that one, but that's pretty interesting. Vengeance, wow.
I love Vengeance. I always have. It's just it's just a good fist pumping anthem. I always like. What that album's got a bunch of songs that like could qualify as that big anthem, so to speak. But I dig that song a lot. So anyway, that's my number 5.
Funny, the word anthem.
Martin's not a fan of Vengeance. Oh well.
No, and it's like when you use the word anthem. I mean, I'm almost thinking, anthems is a different word than epic. I mean, we'll talk a little bit about Gillan epics, but I don't like. The whole bottom of my list is full of those really party poppy sort of songs where I almost put Vengeance in with that. So anyways, so let's see. So I'm at number 4 now, right? Okay. Yep. So my number 4 is also from Mr. Universe, and it is Dead of Night. And Dead of Night, I just love the big cranking John McCoy bass riff that starts it off. I love that slinky groove of this one. Again, this is one that is on the Japanese album, but I think it's a little loose bolted on the Japanese album, and here it's just got this great groove to it. Just a good heavy song with a neat hook. Some of those humorous Ian Gillan lyrics, but and it's got these weird keyboard sweeps that are part of the fill that go on. But yeah, it's just driven by that massive, big John McCoy, big stun bass riff throughout. So yeah, just a really cool grinding, heavy, groovy one.
And Bernie is unleashed on that song on the Mr. Universe album. I love his, I mean, Bernie with his like overdriven whammy bar theatrics and stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
what a unique player he was, I tell you.
Yeah.
All right, so my number 4, you might be an odd choice for a lot of people. Mutually Assured Destruction.
Wow. Okay.
Which appears on the Double Trouble CD set. Technically was what, a B-side, I believe, right?
Yeah, it's not part of the main album, or Double Trouble, of course, is a double album, and the second one's a live album, right? Is it one of the live tracks though? Also, let's see. Yeah, it is one of the live tracks too.
Yep.
I think it's live on there. Yeah. So it's live and a B-side, I suppose.
Yep.
Actually, it was an A-side single. I think it was released.
It might have been. Yeah.
Very complicated. Yeah, with his single history, it's very, very elaborate.
But it's a little unique in my list because it's not a very fast and heavy song. It's more kind of like a simmering, like moody prog rocker, and then punctuated by some crazy Ian Gillan screams, right? Again, my second favorite song of all time is Child in Time. So I really kind of gravitate towards stuff like that when it comes to Ian Gillan. And you're going to see another one in my list that's kind of similar to this, but I've always liked this song a lot. It's got this kind of menace to it, and I think the lyrics are pretty prophetic of things to come in the future, considering it was like 1981 or whatever it was, 80. So that's my number 4. Number 3, what do you got, Martin?
Number 3, I have the title track from this bad boy here, Future Shock. And my Future Shock was bought as a new release back in 1981 in Spokane, Washington. So I've got one of these with the booklet throughout, right?
That's very nice.
Yeah, so this was look at that shot of the band. There's exactly what you were talking about, right? That that really cool rock scrabble, like just I guess it doesn't look particularly working class, but you've got basically they're all characters, right? They're all essentially laid
sitting
out
there with their booze and their cigarettes, just kind of hanging out, dressed like
pretty cool. And Ian in the classic, and then you get the lyrics. And you get even more pictures, individual shots of the band, more pictures there. You get the great Mick Underwood at the back, another one of those. So Future Shock, I really I love it because, again, really, really good recording on this album and this song. So this is one of the most high fidelity songs and albums that they ever got. It's very Deep Purple-ish. It's fast moving. It's got a really cool riff that has kind of a modulating character to it. And yeah, just a great, quick paced groove to it. Cool lyrics. I mean, Ian always wrote cool lyrics, but these are a little more on the philosophical side. Yeah, just a good heavy rock and Gillan tune in the Deep Purple manner.
Yep. No, I dig it a lot. It's it's one of my honorable mentions here. I like that song a lot. Like I said, I think it's an underrated album. Mm-hmm. My number 3, let's go back to the Japanese album for kind of part 2 of my number 4, which is Fighting Man. Again, my love for Child in Time. You can understand my love for Fighting Man. It's kind of this low. It's like 8 minutes long. It's just kind of like sputters along. It's kind of moody and atmospheric, and then all of a sudden, Ian just starts screaming. It starts mellow, and he keeps burning in intensity. And it's, for me, probably one of this band's greatest kind of, if you can pick like a couple of prog songs from this catalog, that's definitely one of them. So anybody who hasn't heard Fighting Man, definitely check it out if you're leaning towards more the progressive side of things. It's quite good on Mr. Universe as well, but I like it better, I think, on the Japanese album. I don't know, it's close. They're very similar. Very similar.
It's hilarious you say that, how close we think the same, because that is the other song that I think is, again, super, super close on Japanese album and Mr. Universe, as in terms of the quality of the recording and putting it together.
It's hard to tell them apart. It really is.
Yeah. I mean, it's long story on the hard to tell them apart. I mean, I won't get it, but those discs that John McCoy put out later, I think he just kind of fooled with the mix a little and called them alternate versions, but we won't get into that. But, so I mean, it's possible that it's even the same version. I don't know, but no, I always found that record, they hadn't found their Gillan sound yet, and obviously they don't got Bernie Torme yet. They don't got Mick Underwood, so the Gillan sound really starts with Mr. Universe. So I think on that album they're trying a little harder to get a really good recording. I don't think they got quite a great performance, really. It seems a little rushed in the performance end of it, but they got a really good recording on that album. So
I
yeah,
think Fighting
they're all
Man,
great albums, obviously.
Fighting Man kind of, I think, bled through a little bit of what they were doing with the final stages of the Ian Gillan band.
Yeah,
That's kind
they
of
were
how
also
I was
trying
looking.
harder. Yeah, to
Yeah.
be really high fidelity and play
Yep.
good and stuff. Yeah. Okay, so my number 2. This is going to be a choice that probably not a lot of people remember or would notice, but when you brought up the idea of doing this, honestly, like right off the top of my head, when you said, "Hey, let's do the top 10 Gillan songs," off the top of my head, immediately I had my number 1 and 2. So that's how strong I feel about this song. It's called "Life Goes On," and it's off of Double Trouble. It's second to last track on the album. I think it's one of his heaviest songs ever. I think it's one of the most Sabbathy songs ever. It has one of these things that I call a Geronimo riff, where I see Soundgarden doing Geronimo riffs. I see Tony Iommi as the inventor of Geronimo riffs, and I even hear Geronimo riffs on Def Leppard Pyromania. So it has this kind of like Native American Indian sort of feel when you think of Indian music from cowboy movies sort of thing. So it has that kind of like on the warpath Native American sort of melody to it. I would say is what I've always thought about this song. But it also has this sort of it really holds back on the drum rhythm where it's sort of tom-tom based a little bit. And I guess that also reinforces this idea of Geronimo riffs, right? Let me think of a good Tony. Anyways, but yeah, Sabbath does a lot of this, I think. But no, this is just a really cool, heavy song, and it has some heavier breaks where it goes into it, and it's very rhythmic and tribal, like I say. Just a good proggy but super heavy song, deep in the track list in the Gillan catalog. A lot of gems all through the catalog. Right?
Oh yeah, that's a great choice. And if you haven't thought about it, you should probably patent the Martin Popoff Geronimo riff. That's very unique.
Yeah, I'll probably do an episode of my podcast, History in 5 Songs, on that idea, because I've always felt it, and every time I hear it, I think of that phrase. So yeah, and people understand. When I do the podcast and pick 5 examples, they'll understand what I mean.
Well, yeah, when you think about it, it's true, because a lot of times you hear about the Middle Eastern riff, right? And that's fairly common. But the Geronimo riff, and I'm trying to picture it, and I'm like, I think I can. So pretty cool. All right, my number 2, my love for hot album openers. I'm sure Martin kind of has an idea what's coming here. From Glory Road, Unchain Your Brain. Dun, 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 dun. I mean, come on, that's like that. Probably their heaviest song. I don't know. I mean, we've talked about a few of them here, but Unchain Your Brain is great. And I have a live version of that from the Reading Festival, which is absolutely killer. Just a great song. And if, like I said, if you think that Gillan was just basically a Deep Purple knockoff, listen to Unchain Your Brain. Totally different band. Great song. Bernie Torme just screaming guitar solos all over the place. The riffs are furious. The drumming is great. And Ian, of course, doing his thing. Love it. I've always loved Unchain Your Brain.
Yeah, cool. I'll tell you a quick funny story about heaviest songs and Ian Gillan, right? So I remember being in a hotel room with Ian and doing an interview. And, I kept saying, he was signing my stuff and everything, I'm making conversation, right? Because I got a lot of stuff for him to sign, right? So I'm feeling a little uncomfortable, right? So, but I'm saying, man, that was a really heavy band, Gillan was a heavy band. He goes, really? You guys were heavy metal and all this, eh? He goes, really? Wow. And so I started, luckily I could rattle off a bunch of songs off the top of my head. And he looks at me and goes, damn, you're right, man. We were rocking, right? I mean, think of how many super fast, heavy songs they have. They had a lot of them, right? And the other
The fact that he had to think about it is crazy.
I know, yeah. He totally forgotten it, and it just never really dawned on him how super heavy that band was, right? And the other thing that happened in that meeting is I remember having a copy of Ian Gillan Toolbox, right? And I think that's the one that just says Gillan Toolbox, right? And I'm saying how it distresses all the fans to think, is this a Gillan album? Is it an Ian Gillan album or whatever? Because it's not really a Gillan album. It certainly doesn't sound like one. I don't like it very much, right? And he looks at it and goes, I never noticed that. You're right. It doesn't say Ian Gillan on it. It just says Gillan. I think it even says it. I don't have it handy here, but I think it even says it, just Gillan on there, right? And he's like, huh, really? So that's annoying the fans, right? Is like he had no idea that there could be this this
Fusion, yeah.
Confusion, and also just like it's perturbing the fans because they don't know if it's an Ian Gillan album or a Gillan album. But to him, he couldn't care less.
No, he probably forgot about it. I moved on to the next one. It's like,
yeah, probably never even saw the album cover until it was in the racks, right? Always hear that. So anyway.
It's not gonna sell anyway, so who cares? Let's just get it out there. We make a couple bucks. Let's move on to the next one.
So my number one, is that where we're at?
Yep.
Okay, so my number one is, and I always knew this was the number one. I talk about this song all the time. It's Mr. Universe from Mr. Universe. I love the big epic long songs as well. I didn't have any other ones in my top 10, but Mr. Universe was absolutely always going to be my number one. I love how it builds. I love the John McCoy in it. I love the Mick Underwood in it. I love the Bernie squalls where there's this long solo section. I love the lyrics, the singing, the snare work. Mick is big on using his snare drum a lot, and just the way this song builds up towards the chorus kind of over and over again. So it's not a super heavy song. It's not a mellow song. You could call it a proggy song. You definitely call it an epic. I mean, he's got a lot of these epics, but I just think it's just a fantastic, just a masterpiece. And absolutely, when you asked me to do this, I knew it was going to be my number one. So yeah, just fantastic track.
My number one. Mr. Universe, absolutely.
Right.
I agree with you. To me, Mr. Universe is the Gillan song, and it always has been for me. And I think you hit it on the head. It's not the heaviest song. It may not be the proggiest song, but it kind of does all of them really, really well. The keyboards are amazing. He does the full range of the vocals on the song. Bernie is screaming at his screaming solo and best. The riffs are heavy. The drumming is perfect. Just a great song. It absolutely is epic. And that is the song I always point anybody to who has never heard this band. That's the song I point them to, because I think it perfectly exemplifies everything that this band is about.
Yeah. So we must be right. This must literally be the Platonic ideal answer of what are the greatest, Gillan songs, especially when we both agree on the number one. I mean, this has got to be the greatest Gillan song, right?
As stated by Popoff and Pardo, man, I'd put it in the books. Mr. Universe, that's the one.
And we had a lot of overlap too, didn't we? So that's pretty cool. So
got any honorable mentions?
Yes, the honorable mentions. So this is pretty funny. So what I did to come up with this list, because I didn't want to forget anything, and I thought it's not that long a catalog, so I literally thought, you know what? When we Facebook post this, I'm gonna put my list of all the songs in order. So I actually did that with every album track, and not a word of a lie, this literally happened without me trying this. You asked me for 3 honorable mentions, and I look at my list, starting what I call the second quarter here, and it literally is a suite of those songs you love, those types of songs, those long mellow ones. My 3 honorable mentions, again, I didn't plan this: Born to Kill, Fighting Man, and On the Rocks, which are all literally like a Mr. Universe, and like what did I leave off of here? I don't even know. Is that all of them? But they're all like a Mr. Universe. They're all these long ones with a lot of passages, generally pretty mellow, long lead-ins, long kind of instrumental passages as well. But literally, it's kind of cool. You could almost make a cool Gillan compilation where it is only these kinds of songs, and you wouldn't fit that many of them on because they're all pretty long. So yeah, there you go. Born to Kill, Fighting Man, which was on your list, and On the Rocks, which was on your list. They almost made my list as well.
Cool. My 3, I'm looking at a whole bunch of them here, but I'm going to try and pick 3 that you didn't mention, because I love all of them. There's no sense in just double tracking here. Puget Sound.
Okay.
And one that I can't believe I couldn't squeeze into my top 10, because I love it, and I love what Bernie played it in his solo band, No Easy Way. Again, another kind of barnstorming live track.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to go with the Ballad of Lusitania Express,
Hmm.
which I dig a lot from the Future Shock album. So a lot of others here, like Men of War, I wanted to squeeze on here too from Double Trouble. I dig that a lot, you know. But
that was very soon for me. Sacra Blue was soon for me. Running White-Faced City Boy, Message in a Bottle,
Caught in the Trap.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. What a catalog, right? And
yeah.
And you know, this fits in that idea of I often argue this as well, is that a lot of my favorite bands weren't around for the 80s, so they didn't screw up. And that's why I like Max Webster more than I like Rush, because Max Webster left before they had a chance to screw up. I mean, they basically had the exact same number of albums as Gillan, 6 or 7, whatever it is, 5, 6, 7. So there are these bands. The Police is another one, right? Just make all these great albums, small catalog, you're gone, right?
Yeah.
And so I feel like Gillan probably would have screwed up eventually. Max Webster probably would have screwed up eventually. They'd have a bunch of crappy albums we don't like, right? But yeah, you know, what is it? 6 Gillan albums? Is it 6? Is it 7? Whatever.
It's 6 with the Japanese album. Yeah,
absolutely. It's just a perfect catalog where every album's really good.
Yeah, I totally agree. So this was fun. Thanks for joining me on this, Martin. Always great talking about songs and albums from bands you love. And I agree with you. It's especially fun when you don't have to do when you're not talking about discography of like 20 or 30 albums, when you got like a handful that you know really, really well, and you can kind of include stuff from all of them. So it was a pleasure working alongside you again, my friend.
Yes.
So you know how it goes, guys and gals watching. List your top 10 favorite Gillan songs, your top 5, your top 20, whatever. No right or wrong answer here. We all like the stuff we like. So it'll be interesting to see what everybody comes up with. And don't forget to visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. Visit us on Facebook, visit us on Twitter. Of course, we're here on YouTube all the damn time. So Martin and I will be coming back together in about a week or so, and he and I got to figure out the next plan of attack, but I've got a long list, as you can imagine. So we've been talking about some cool stuff, so we'll bring something to you very soon. Martin, enjoy the rest of your weekend, and we'll catch up soon. Everybody take care, and we'll see you shortly. All right? Bye-bye.
Awesome.